Welcome to the Gal Matrix. We're back with Gwen, Sandy Fur, one of my very best friends and my favorite coach.
Mutual.
Hmm. And we're here during Women's History Month, which feels really timely to me because we are 2 months into 4 years of white men's history. Um, so we need to cope somehow.
And it
And
feels pretty heavy.
it feels like a dumpster fire on top of a shit show, on top of the Keystone Cops.
Yeah.
It's not good. But we are here to focus on what we can do and how we can show up for women. And before we do that, I have to tell you that I have coined a new phrase. And the teenagers do it all the time, so I feel like, why can't I?
Right, sure.
Okay, so here's my new phrase. It's a verb, and it is I'm pausing. And what that means is I'm having menopause symptoms.
Love it.
Because on any given day, in any given hour, I could be wearing a parka and a scarf, or I could be stripped down to a tank top, and you never know what I'm going to be wearing. And I'll just suddenly get really flushed and hot and like lose my train of thought. And so instead of having to just really either hide it or do a long explanation, I'm just going to be like, I'm pausing. Please forgive me. I'm pausing. I'm in the
Love.
pause.
With a smile on your face, right?
That's no joke. This
It's no
menopause stuff.
joke. Yep.
God, God.
Ah,
Yeah.
feels out of body.
Yeah. So I thought we could talk about things that we as women can start, stop, and continue doing to show up for ourselves and each other. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right. So, something we can start would be advocating. So, it starts with us, it starts with you and me saying, why not me? Right?
Mhm.
Why not me?
Mhm.
Why can't I apply for that job? Why can't I ask for more money? Why can't I pursue a promotion where I am now?
Mhm.
Um, it means advocating for our daughters, our sisters. It means not taking no for an answer when I get emails from my daughter's teachers being like, yeah, she's doing fine. She's fine compared to everyone else, she's fine.
Not sufficient.
And I don't have to be like hard on them about that. They have the hardest jobs in the world, right?
Yeah.
But I also don't have to take fine for an answer.
Right.
What about you? Give me a start.
Well, what start with is I went through the list of women that are typically highlighted during Women's History Month just to figure out what really struck me, who really struck me, what kind of background really struck me. And I found myself just moving through anybody related to politics or a Nobel laureate. I was just like, oh, that's just too heavy right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's what I'm doing in coaching is, of course, I can coach you on leadership and how to be a great executive and how to move up the career ladder and focus on executive presence. And yet I just don't feel like that's sufficient. The word I just used with you. It's like everyone is discombobulated right now. They're like cut off. They're not balanced at all. And so I'm trying to add a lot more to the personal side of coaching. You know, if we can all double down on what gives us fun and pleasure and just takes our mind off all this other stuff, we become more expansive, we become more balanced. And so I was going scrolling through the list. The name of the woman that struck me this morning was Lucille Ball. And I read her background. She had a tough growing up. New York, dad died at 3, mom later remarried, stepdad didn't want kids, didn't appreciate or want to be around small children, and mom had 2. So stepdad encouraged mom to move away, and her brother went to live with a family, and she ended up living with the stepdad's family, who had no interest in having a step granddaughter for several years. Um, and then of course she went on to want to be an actor and actress in theater, and she ended up getting enrolled in the same acting school as oh gosh, name's escaping me right now. And she got kicked out of the school because she was starstruck by this other student and just didn't have confidence and wasn't bringing it all to the school. And the school contacted her mom and just said, you're wasting her time and your money and our time, so time for her to go. So she didn't give up, and she kept going into radio. She kept going into just shows that would roam around. She finally met Desi Arnaz. He was only 23. He was a band leader. He wasn't even in acting. And um, they started doing some shows on the road. CBS or MGM started to get a little interest in her. Asked her to dye her hair red, which she did, which helped her distinguish herself. But still, it was years and years and years. And CBS finally said, we would like to offer you a show just about daily life. And she insisted that they hire Desi to be her husband on screen, and they refused. So they took the show on the road, and finally CBS came back around and offered them the show. Then she was very particular. She was very specific. She was a perfectionist. So we talk about the brilliance of her. She practiced all the time. She held herself up to a very high standard. A lot of her mannerisms on TV were practiced for hours and hours and hours ahead of time. Um, and so, she finally got offered this show, and yet she was so much a perfectionist. She wanted it filmed a particular way rather than the way shows were at that time. And so ultimately, she and Desi had to agree to a pay cut to be able to offer and move forward with the show at the cost. She was the first woman to actually show herself pregnant on TV, first woman to have baby on TV. It was like a huge event. She actually, the episode had 75% viewer rating across the country of the episode where she had Desi Jr., and she actually had a cesarean that same day to actually have Desi Jr. But anyway,
So
just
what's the start? Like, what do
all
you take
kinds
from
of
this?
barriers. The start is to look back on these women and their histories and just dig in, appreciate. They didn't start as Hollywood superstars or fantastic musicians, or Nobel Peace Prize winners, or Nobel laureates. I mean, it's easy to be intimidating. So start with digging into background and seeing yourself in the background of those women when you don't have courage, when you're losing your footing, and just remember, they did it, you can do it too. We all have role models.
I love that, especially in today's social media presence where everybody looks perfect, everybody looks like they were born however they show up. And even aging itself, menopause itself, like it's becoming commoditized now. And so you have all these unusually beautiful women, Halle Berry, Elle Macpherson, that are presenting aging as something that you can conquer if you take
Mhm.
these supplements that they're selling, and then you're going to end up looking,
Yeah.
15, 20 years younger.
Mhm.
So looking beyond the facade and
Yeah.
going back to see all like the story you told of her, she failed so many times. She got told, no, you're not good
No.
enough so many
Mhm.
times. And the lesson I think is to keep going,
Keep
which is
going.
really hard.
Yes, it is. And just remember, they had a really, really hard time too, and they didn't know what their ultimate outcome would be. And that's the hard part. And it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And we're all in it. We're all in
Yeah.
this shit show looking at the news. And maybe we should just instead dig into history and look at people we admire, or people we can empathize with.
Speaking of people that we admire, this is another start I would offer if you're trying to cut through the noise of the 24-hour news headlines right now is a woman named Heather Cox Richardson. She's a historian and she takes the news of the day each week and she puts it in context from a historical perspective. And it is fascinating. And I just really admire people like her. She did this every week, the first Trump presidency, and she didn't take a break, but she was able to like put her energy in multiple places during the last administration, and now she's back. She does it every single week, tirelessly. It's so inspiring. Something that I think we can stop, and this makes me think of a client that I'm working with right now. So we can stop helping the patriarchy keep us
Yeah.
small.
Yeah.
So, and it's internalized sexism, right? And what it looks like is when a woman gets into a position of power of any kind, having that sense that there's only a few seats at the table for women.
Yeah.
And so, sort of almost becoming a barrier to other women being able to have opportunities to
Mhm.
advance, especially, I don't know why, especially though, in leadership, which is weird because I really think like women are naturally more gifted at emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
which is what it takes to be a leader,
Right.
right? But I have a client right now who meets 95 of 100 of the qualifications for this job. And her boss is not even going to interview her for it.
Wow.
So we can stop competing, stop comparing, stop when somebody else has success instead of wondering, oh, what did they do to get that? Or what was unfair about them advancing? Celebrate each other
Mhm.
openly, make
Yep.
room for each other. When you get a seat at a table of power, bring three more women with you.
Right. Right.
um, in terms of I think continuing to encourage each other to take risks. And that's something that you and I have done for each other a lot the past 5 years, right? So you've encouraged me to when I got certified as a yoga and meditation instructor, you encouraged me to go do something with it, right? Because I had a lot of imposter syndrome and just thought I can't be a yoga teacher. I can't, bring my foot up here. I can't even touch my toes. But because you pushed me to go do something with it, now I teach three classes a week to elderly and assisted living participants. And it's like the most magical, wonderful thing.
And you didn't expect it to be a magical, wonderful thing. And it kind of resurrected for you a past where you loved working with the elderly.
I did. They're my people.
Hmm.
It in terms of helping me feel present in the moment and to appreciate and to put things in perspective, doing that has been the most powerful thing for me in the last 2 years since my mom died.
Yeah.
So encouraging each other to take risks, right?
Hmm.
To start podcasts, to become certified as a psilocybin coach in your
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
the big one, though, that I want you to talk about a little bit is becoming an intimacy coach. And you've had me participate in a couple of your webinars, and it's so transformative, and it initially it feels almost like taboo to think about, okay, what do I want? What is my pleasure profile? Even
Mhm.
saying those words feels a little bit like scary to me. So
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about this latest certification.
Well, that's exactly why I went into it because it is taboo, unfortunately, in our culture and many cultures around the world, especially for women to even be thinking about, but much less talking about or talking publicly about pleasure. Um, and so I too had that when I first started, getting drawn into, a few classes and, a few different things. And then I thought, why would any of us go, ooh, when we're talking about intimacy, which is key to relationship building, whether that's with a partner or with anyone, it's intimacy. And in order to build relationships with others, you need to know yourself.
Right. Or I mean, even building a relationship, an intimate relationship with our own body, right? I
With
mean,
your
that is not how we are socialized as
We
women
are
in this
not.
culture.
We're not even allowed in many cases to assess our body or look at our body. How many women know what our body truly looks like from every angle?
Oh my
Not
God.
many.
That
Not many.
reminds me of Fried Green Tomatoes, one of my favorite movies.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that whole scene of her with the mirror and
Yeah. So
oh,
I just, like you, love to promote women. I love to give women voice. I love to help empower women and find courage so that I don't get caught up all the time in executive coaching with imposter syndrome or executive presence. How do I get there? It's like it comes from here. And until you know yourself and have the guts to live in this body and explore your body and know what language do you like to use? What kind of touch do you like? How can you have a conversation with a significant other about those things? And so the cliche part is in my own mind, you can't show up in the boardroom if you don't know how to show up in the bedroom. If you don't have the agency to know yourself, know the language, know the touch, and have the guts to have those really crucial conversations with a partner, believe in yourself, then how can you show up in the boardroom with confidence and courage and that straight spine and that executive presence?
oh my God. What I take from that, and I love that my 17 or 18, he's 18 now. My 18-year-old just walked out the front door as we're talking about this. That's who I don't want to be talking about these things with, but I do want to talk about them with other women. And what I'm taking from what you're saying is that I deserve to be a fully fledged human,
Yes,
right? I
yes.
deserve, and that includes my sexuality and my desire for pleasure,
Yes.
and that should be centered
Mhm.
in my identity
Mhm.
because it gets to be centered in men's identity. So why not us too?
And if you look up the World Health Organization definition of health, which is always the grounding point for me, I'm about improving health. Sexual health is right there on the list. And sexual health is not just defined as the absence of disease.
Right, right. Oh, yeah. I can't support this enough. And I know that I need to support it because I know that I need to do it for myself more and more and more and more. So,
Yeah. At
so
every stage, at every age, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, all of it.
I love it. Um, yeah, happy Women's History Month.
Yeah, you too.
Let's go forth and take more risks and show up for each other and ourselves and
Mhm.
other women.
Absolutely. Always.
I'll see you soon.
Okay. Have a good one. Bye.